525,600 minutes, 8,760 hours, 365 days, 12 months. Every moment in time means history unfolding. Sometimes these are triumphs that brought cheers and inspired us to move forward in our endeavors. But on the flip side, these also meant trials that tested our perseverance, yet taught us to face every tomorrow with a glimmer of hope and lots of courage. Tonight, we look back at these moments in our history that brought us inspiration and pressed us to rise above all adversities and, in the process, help us in building a better nation. I am William Theo. This is the PNA Year Ender. The introduction of vaccines offered a glimmer of hope for the world that has been reeling from the impact of a pandemic. However, the threat of new variants and other challenges in achieving population protection created a roadblock in the journey towards healing. Benj Mondoc looks back at the key moments in the battle against COVID-19.
The battle against COVID-19 is the biggest story of 2021. With the dreaded coronavirus disease still wreaking havoc, the year started with the Filipino nation looking forward to the arrival of the bullet against the unseen enemy. The government had to get past formidable obstacles to have a slice of the scarce global supply of the coveted vaccine. February 28th, the vaccine finally arrived on Philippine soil, 600,000 doses of Sinovac.
I said it before, and I will say it again. COVID-19 vaccines should be treated as a global public good and made available to all, rich and poor alike. No nation, no people should be left to suffer the ravages of this pandemic for whatever reason. Comprehensive global recovery hinges on the equal and easy access by everyone to life-saving vaccines. Because at the end of the day, it's repeatedly said, no one is safe until everyone is safe.
The following day, March 1st, the Philippines started distributing and administering shots of the COVID-19 vaccine. The first to receive it was Dr. Gerardo Legazpi, director of the Philippine General Hospital. And so the government's COVID-19 vaccination program rolled off. First in the line were healthcare workers and other medical frontliners. In the weeks and months following that first shipment of Sinovac, more and more doses of the jab of different brands were delivered. The vaccination program was opened to other sectors like people with comorbidity and the senior citizens. Other sectors were eventually added to the long list of those qualified to have the vaccine. Amid the vaccine rollout, the government was still implementing strict observance of minimum health protocols to check the spread of the disease, wearing of face masks, and social distancing. Just as when the Philippines was gaining ground against COVID-19, the Delta variant gained foothold and quickly spread across the archipelago. That Delta variant soon emerged as the most dominant variant not only in the Philippines, but also in lots of other countries as well. The country logged record numbers of daily cases, from highs of more than 14,000 daily cases in April to more than 26,000 daily cases in September. The Delta variant had already crippled the health system of India, where it was first detected. In less than 2 months after the more contagious Delta variant reared its ugly head in the Philippines, the government was able to contain it. Among the measures undertaken by the government is the implementation of granular lockdowns and the alert level system. The new classification framework, which started in September, has 5 alert levels, with each level having specific allowable activities. Cities and municipalities are given the authority to impose granular lockdowns depending on the number of positive cases in the area. It was a delicate balancing act between health and economy, an act that proved to be successful in containing the virus and in jump-starting the economy. In September, President Duterte approved the resumption of limited in-person classes for select courses in the tertiary level. These include engineering and technology, hotel and restaurant management, tourism and travel management, marine engineering, and marine transportation. In October, President Duterte approved the vaccination of the general population, including the 12 to 17-year-olds. In November, some 300 public and private schools have reopened for limited face-to-face classes in select cities and towns. The Department of Education reported that the limited face-to-face classes was successful and that there was no report of COVID-19 infection among the participating students. Meantime, the first 2 cases of the Omicron variant were detected by the DOH on December 15. One of the cases is a returning overseas Filipino who arrived from Japan, and the other is a Nigerian who came from Oman. The DOH also announced the 3rd case of Omicron-positive patient on December 19, while the 4th case was announced on Monday, December 27. The country is currently administering booster shots for fully vaccinated adults, while children 5 to 11 years old will also get their vaccines once the government procured the right dosage and concentration of the vaccines for them. The Philippines has already more than 210 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines as of Thursday, December 30. Of the number, more than 106 million doses have been administered. Close to 50 million Filipinos are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
Sa dami ng mga bakunang dumating, mahigit 200 million doses, sapat na ang ating supply para mabakunahan ang at least 100 million na Pilipino sa buong bansa at pwede na po tayong magbigay pati booster shots. Kaya naman, hinihikayat namin ang lahat ng eligible na magpa-booster shots para sa kanilang proteksyon, lalo na may banta ng Omicron variant.
Despite the success of the vaccination program, the government is regularly reminding Filipinos not to be complacent, that all must still observe minimum health protocols. All must do their share to completely win the war against COVID-19. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Benj Bondo.
The Philippines is no stranger to the effects of nature's fury, which has been worsened by the impact of climate change. And while the later months of the year paved the way for the holiday season, this is also the time when the country saw strong tropical cyclones sweeping through communities, leaving a trail of devastation. Janice Cave tells us more.
"2021 came knocking in the worst of times. Aside from the COVID-19 pandemic, a big number of Filipinos welcomed the year still reeling from the devastation of Typhoon Ulysses that battered almost the entire breadth and length of Luzon. Bicol region suffered, and so did Cagayan Valley. Filipinos did welcome 2021, trying to make ends meet amid mass flooding and the pandemic. While post-disaster rehabilitation was underway in hard-hit areas, another typhoon hit the country in February. Named Auring, the tropical storm made its landfall in Samar. Also severely affected was the province of Surigao, where floodwater inundated lots of houses. The storm caused 1 death and the sinking of a fishing boat whose crew of 15 persons went adrift for 6 days before they were rescued. In April, Super Typhoon Bising was tracked over the Pacific Ocean and was moving towards eastern Philippines. Preemptive mass evacuation was done. Relief goods were prepositioned. Luckily, Bising skirted the Philippines, but it still dumped heavy rains in the eastern part of the country, flooding many villages and forcing thousands out of their homes. Bising left 4 persons dead. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, also reported extensive damage in agriculture in Bicol and Eastern Visayas. Fish unloading volume also declined by 24% after Bising. In May, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources and the National Fisheries Research and Development Institute introduced the ISDAP in the coastal community of Dingalan, Aurora. The app aims to simplify the weather forecasts and send them to the registered mobile numbers of fisherfolk. It also helps the fisherfolk decide whether or not to set sail and take the necessary precautions. During this time, a weather disturbance occurred. The typhoon named Krising made its landfall in Davao Oriental. In June, Tropical Storm Dante brought rains to large areas of Mindanao. the Visayas and Luzon, causing landslides and floodings. Villages in Surigao del Norte, Southern Leyte, Bohol, Romblon, and Oriental Mindoro were submerged in knee-deep waters. Dante made a total of 8 landfalls, 1 in the Visayas and 7 in Luzon. 2 deaths were reported in the Davao region, while the other 2 were from Soxaragen. In July, Tropical Storm Fabian enhanced the southwest monsoon. The result was heavy downpour in Luzon and parts of the Visayas. Water level in rivers and other waterways rose to critical level. There was flooding in Metro Manila. The towns of Kalumpit, Hagonoy, and Malolos in the province of Bulacan and large area of Bataan were inundated. The Department of Agriculture reported that Typhoon Fabian has caused almost 700 million pesos worth of damage to agriculture in the country. Meanwhile, damage to infrastructure was placed at 1.17 billion pesos. In September, signal number 3 was up in Samar as Typhoon Jolina entered the country with destructive typhoon force winds. It also caused widespread power outages in eastern Visayas. 2 dams in Bulacan, the Bustos and Ipo dams, released excess water due to heavy rains. Jolina also displaced over 12,000 persons in Mimaropa, Bicol, Western Visayas, and Eastern Visayas. Thousands were also evacuated in Metro Manila and Quezon City as it soaked Luzon. While Jolina batters Luzon, another typhoon named Kiko also entered the country, bringing heavy rains in Cagayan, including the Babuyan Islands and northern Isabela. Agriculture and infrastructure damage due to Jolina exceeded 1.3 billion pesos, while the damage brought by Kiko in Cagayan reached 54.16 million pesos. In October, 2 weather disturbances entered the country. First was Tropical Depression Lani that drenched the eastern and western Visayas regions and nearby areas. Days after, weather disturbance Maring intensified into a severe tropical storm and hit Luzon. Maring left the country with 220 million pesos damage in Ilocos Norte and has affected over 144,000 farmers in the Cordillera and other provinces in northern Luzon. And just this month, just as Filipinos were about to celebrate Christmas, Typhoon Odette came rushing in. Odette's strong winds and the rains it dumped devastated Siagra Islands, Surigao del Sur, the province of Dinagat, Cebu, Bohol, and Palawan. Thousands of houses were completely damaged. Power and telecommunications went off. Thousands spent their Christmas in evacuation centers. In all, more than 1 million families were affected while almost 400 individuals perished. Through all these storms, the spirit of Bayanihan was evident. Filipinos from all walks of life joined hands in helping those who were affected by the weather disturbances. Contributions in kind or in cash came pouring in, enabling millions to have food, water, clothing, and temporary shelters. Actual technical and manual services were extended, thus restoring power and telecommunication lines. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
Still to come, we look back at the government's efforts to uplift Filipinos, boost progress, and stop insurgency. Plus, what can we anticipate as we vote next year while in a pandemic? And who are the names we will look out for? Let's find out as the PNA Newsroom returns after a break. The government is not hitting the brakes when it comes to advancing development across the country through various infrastructure projects, thanks to the Build, Build, Build program, which gave rise to the golden era of infrastructure projects and other key programs, especially in the countryside. The vision of providing better lives for Filipinos is now closer to reality. Chris Mundo tells us more.
The Duterte administration has been touted as the golden age of infrastructure. The government's Build, Build, Build programs paved the way for more cities and tourism destinations to become economic strongholds. Development is also seen to curb the proliferation of illegal drugs, corruption, and insurgency. In terms of infrastructure, the Duterte administration spearheaded the construction of more bridges, ecotourism roads, airports, seaports, and more. Among this is the 18-kilometer Skyway Stage 3 project, which was inaugurated in January. The expressway project connects the North Luzon Expressway and the South Luzon Expressway and reduces travel time from Buendia to Balintawak from 2 hours to approximately 15 to 20 minutes.
Today, to the hard work and cooperation of DPWH, we finally opened this 19-kilometer segment of the Skyway, which runs from Buendia in Makati to NLEX here in Balintawak. Connecting with Skyway Stages 1 and 2, we now have a continuous 35-kilometer elevated expressway that directly connects Alabang to Balintawak. This, beyond doubt, will significantly contribute to the efficient movement of goods and people from north to south and from within Manila. The successful completion of the Skyway is a testament to the efficiency, reliability, and sustainability of our Build, Build program.
Following month, the government opened the 8.2-kilometer Subic-Freeport Expressway. It is seen to accelerate business activities and facilitate the flow of goods and services between the economic zones in Clark and Subic. The groundworks have also started for the 14.97 billion peso Pasacao-Balatan Tourism Coastal Highway in Camarines Sur. Over 1,000 engineers were hired under the Build, Build, Build program for the construction of more roads, bridges, and other public infrastructure. In March, President Rodrigo Duterte led the inauguration of the rehabilitated airport and the new port operations building in Dumaguete. The airport upgrade project now allows the takeoff and landing of larger and heavier aircrafts, while the expanded passenger terminal has increased its holding capacity from 330 to 450 people. Also in March, 3 seaport projects were inaugurated in Palawan to boost the tourism and commerce in the province. The government also addressed the traffic congestion in Manila with the completion of the Bonifacio Global City Ortigas Center Link Roads, the Estrella Pantaleon Bridge connecting Mandaluyong to Makati, and the Binondo Intramuros Bridge, among others. Meanwhile, the Cavite-Laguna Expressway has also been completed, as well as the NLEX Harbor Link, which reduces the usual 1-hour travel time from port area in Manila to NLEX to just 10 minutes. Also finished and open to traffic is the Urdaneta City Bypass Road in Pangasinan, the 30-kilometer 4-lane expressway from Tarlac to Cabanatuan City, known as the Central Luzon Link Expressway, the arterial road bypass in Plaridel, Bulacan, the Sariaya Bypass Road in Quezon, the new diversion road from Batangas City to the towns of Bawan and Mabini, the Sorsogon City Coastal Bypass Road, the 11-kilometer Samar Pacific Coastal Road in northern Samar, and the full 7 kilometers of the segment of Davao City Coastal Road. The General Santos Airport was also upgraded. It can now accommodate at least 2 million passengers annually, or almost double its pre-pandemic annual passenger capacity of 1.05 million. Meanwhile, 11 seaport projects were simultaneously inaugurated in Calapan, Mindoro. One of these projects is Calapan Port's new passenger terminal with a maximum passenger capacity of 3,500. In Zamboanga, its port was also rehabilitated to accommodate at least 4,000 concurrent passengers. Moreover, the 30 billion peso Cebu-Cordova Expressway is set to be operational early next year. More than the infrastructures, President Duterte's whole of the nation approach has also contributed to the surrender of more former rebels into the fold of the law. This year, more former rebels have completed their livelihood training and were given free housing units, scholarships, and mental rehabilitation for them to start a new life with their own family. Also this year, more various multi-sectoral groups were inspired to take an active role to dismantle communist terrorist groups and supported the creation of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-LCAC. Under the Executive Order Number 70, a whole-of-nation approach was adopted to end local communist armed conflict. This year, 2021, was also marred with a controversy regarding the termination of the UP-DND Accord. The agreement, which was signed on June 13, 1989, prohibits the military and the police from entering all UP campuses without prior notice to its administration. In January 2021, the Duterte administration scrapped the accord due to allegations of in-campus communist recruitment. The condemnation against the New People's Army grew when Nolven Absalon and FEU football player Keith Absalon were killed in an anti-personnel landmine blast in June. The victims were riding on a bicycle in Masbate when the incident happened. Further investigation revealed that Nolven had a gunshot wound to the right shoulder as well as his left lateral thigh, while Keith took a bullet to the right eye. The Absalon family rejected the written apology of the CPP-NPA that claimed the unnecessary deaths of Keith and Nolven were a mistake in military action by their group.
I commend the National Task Force and Regional Task Force to end the local communist armed conflict for collectively realizing the government's policy of holistic and whole-of-the-nation approach to ending communist insurgency. Mag-segue ako dito, ha. Kaya nga bumagsak yung peace talker. Lahat ng binigay na mga proposals, binigay ko rin sa military, sabi ko, you study. Pero ako talaga, pagtanggap ko, hindi na. And there was this one missing ingredient to arrive really at a peaceful resolution of the conflict. Yung accountability. Wala. Paano yung namatay? Paano yung biktima nila na sabihin mo lang na peace talks na magdamano tayo? Ano ito? Laro ng bata? Kaya ako hindi talaga sabi ko, may kulang dito. One ingredient is really the sanctions sa mga yung mga insurgents.
Lastly, President Duterte assures the public that he would dedicate his remaining months in office to eradicate illegal drugs and corruption in the government.
Gobyerno dili perfecto. Ako dili perfecto. Faults? Me? Plenty. Pero dili ng pangawat o kwarta. Naalang ko yung mga pasanang kaso, extrajudicial killing, mabot na tadiha. Ako, I'm trying to preserve my country. Di na ko kinahanglan lekturan pagkinsa nga ang akong nasod, mahal na ko, kay muor ni nasod na ko. Wala, di ko makaatog laing lugar. Di po ko pasuban ng mga mga Amerikana. Di.
For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Mundo.
It is a time of the year where we look forward to being with our families and those we hold dear. But for some who joined the armed struggle, the occasion meant misery and sorrow as they are away from their loved ones, only to realize that a life of suffering awaits them after being lured into armed conflict. And for some who have been awakened, a fresh start is probably the best holiday gift they received after returning to the fold of the law. Rom Dulfo reports.
In a remote barangay, San Isidro, Leyte, lives former Communist Party of the Philippines New People's Army rebels trying to rebuild their lives, shattered by years of armed conflict, together with their families through the help of the government. Kamayang, 50 years old, an ex-CPP-NPA cadre, told the Philippine news agency that she is now committed to the government in helping former rebels like her now living at the Peace and Prosperity Village. Mayang says she was only 15 years old when she was recruited to the armed group, and for 20 years she took arms, embraced the ideology of the CPP-NPA, and fought the government. She says she joined the NPA in the hope of helping people alleviate poverty, but later on realized that the CPP-NPA has no means to help improve the lives of the people. She was captured by soldiers in 2007, and since then, she has been cooperating with the government in truly helping people as she urges former comrades to return to the folds of the law.
Siguro walang rebuilding hindi magbago sa ginawa ng gobyerno ngayon at sa ginawa ni President Duterte. Kaya isa siguro sa panawagan ko sa mga kasamahan ko ngayon na hindi pa huli ang lahat para bumaba sila, para makapiling nila ang pamilya at mga anak nila. Dahil karamihan sa mga nanay nga kadre, iniwan ang mga anak nila sa masa.
Mayang is the Provincial Federation President of the Integrated Peace and Development Workers Association, a group of former rebels that spearheads the establishment of their community. Among the assistance being provided to former rebels in the village is the construction of 458 units of permanent houses, livelihood training, provision of capital, farm-related technical skills, new access roads, product development, and marketing, among others. When President Rodrigo Duterte visited San Isidro town in January 2020, he promised them the 20 million peso housing project that has become the part of the Enhanced Comprehensive Local Integration Program, or the ECLIP, of the government. Each house and lot package costs 450,000 pesos with a lot size of 60 square meters and a floor area of 21 square meters. The road access to the village is currently being built with a total cost of 67 million pesos. Another infrastructure project under construction is the 235 million peso road from the village to the nearby Kalubian town. The Department of Agrarian Reform has also completed the distribution of 2,000 square meters farm lot to each of the 458 former rebels. Mayang says they now have 13 cooperatives in the village with more than 700 members.
Ang 13 cooperative, dalawang municipality, Kalubian at San Isidro, Leyte, na dati silang mga rebelde kasama ko, na buo din sila, na buo din sila na bumaliktad at parang tinutupad din sa gobyerno ang hiningi ng mga tao na halos lahat. Sila na mismo. Kapag pumunta pa dito ang NPA, sila na mismo na ayaw na namin. Dahil ito na ang gusto namin. Lupa para sa mga magsasaka. At nandyan lahat ng mga training na ibigay na lahat. At nakilala ang Peace and Prosperity Village.
There are also 22 poultry egg-laying facilities, or 2 for each of the 11 associations within the area, that was provided by the local government. Most of the surrenderers were recruited by Mayang from the 1990s to 2000. Since her arrest, she has been instrumental in convincing hundreds of rebels in Leyte to trust the government and go back to the folds of the law.
Kaya isa rin ako sa nagpursige na hindi rin sila basta-basta magsuko kung wala silang makita. Kaya ang kasama ko ang Philippine Army sa paano ayusin, paano i-guide ang tao dito. No?
Now Mayang's families are the people and the Philippine Army. She also extends her gratitude to the national government.
Handa kaming tumulong din at sana matulungan pa rin kami. Siyempre parang ang co-op, parang bata din sila na kailangan pa din namin ng mga trainings, kailangan pa rin namin ng hindi mapabayaan din sa mga agency kung anong kailangan na, kung anong request namin na mapalago pa ang business namin.
The CPP-NPA, which has been waging a 5-decade armed struggle against the government, is listed as a terrorist organization by the US, the European Union, the UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the Philippines. The NDF has been formally designated as a terrorist organization by the Anti-Terror Council on June 23, 2021, citing it as an integral and separate part of the CPP-NPA created in April 1973.
In less than 6 months, another page in the country's history is about to turn as Filipinos will again choose the country's next leaders. As Filipinos braced for the first polls under a pandemic, Benj Bondoc zooms in on the twists and turns that occurred prior to the race for the palace and other posts.
The May 2022 national and local elections comes as the Duterte administration exits the stage amid the uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic. Platforms and pronouncements from aspirants focused on recovering from the pandemic's effects on the economy and all sectors of Filipino society. The Commission on Elections is keen on holding the polls, the first to be held while the country is grappling with the pandemic. With this, the COMELEC encouraged everyone to vote, with over 65.7 million registrants answering the call. The filing of certificates of candidacy on October 1 to 8 sent Filipinos in suspense for those who will throw their hats into the ring. This period and the days after would mark the numerous plot twists determining the fates of national and local candidates. The administration party PDP Laban faced its biggest snag as infighting led to them joining the elections without a standard bearer. Vice President Leni Robredo, considered a stalwart of the opposition, decided to run as an independent presidential candidate instead of sticking with the Liberal Party. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. turned away from his father's party, the Kilusang Bagong Lipunan, to run under the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. He chose to adopt as his running mate Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte, herself a shoo-in for the presidency and who had ditched her regional party Hugpong ng Pagbabago to join the Lakas CMD. President Rodrigo Duterte himself got involved in the melee of political parties as he rejected a coalition among PDP Laban, Federalismo ng Dugong Dakilang Samahan or PDDS, and Lakas CMD. Duterte initially planned to retire from politics after his term ends in June 2022, but instead he decided to run for senator, a race which he would later withdraw from. The Lakas CMD moved on and adopted the BBM Sara tandem as their standard bearers. The Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, Lakas CMD, Puwersa ng Masang Pilipino, and Hugpong ng Pagbabago would then form a unit team to support their candidacies. Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, once insistent on becoming president, withdrew his certificate of candidacy, causing the PDP Laban to lose its standard bearer. Senator Bongo, an ally and favorite of the president, dropped his vice presidential bid and filed a COC for president under the PDDS. Despite his previous assertions, Go would leave the presidential race for good. Other aspirants for president who filed statements of withdrawal include Ana Capella Velasco of Lakas CMD and Orlando de Guzman of Partido ng Masang Pilipino. Walden Bello meanwhile filed a statement of substitution replacing vice presidential candidate Raquel Castillo of Partido Lakas ng Masa. Others who withdrew from the vice presidential race are Bienvenido Lorque of Katipunan ng Demokratikong Pilipino, Joel Sison of Kilusang Bagong Lipunan, and Benedicto Jose of PDDS. With a flood of candidacies and withdrawals comes the numerous petitions to stop them from running. In November, the COMELEC counted some 91 petitions so far seeking to cancel the COCs of national aspirants. Several petitions have also been filed to declare candidates as nuisance, 82 for president, 15 for vice president, and 108 for senator. To date, the COMELEC has counted 15 aspirants to eventually aim for the highest seat in Malacanang. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Bench Bondo.
Up next, we pay our respects to the victims of the worst aviation accident in Philippine military history. And the Philippines earns its first Olympic gold medal and more. We cheer for the athletes that made Philippine sports history. Stay with us in the year-end special of the PNA Newsroom.
Nanay, tatay, ate, kuya. Pangalawang taon na tayong magpapasko na may pandemya. Marami mang pagsubok. Likas naman tayong palaban para sa pamilya. Naaalala niyo ba nung wala pang bakuna? Naka-lockdown. Hindi pwedeng magsama-sama. Magkakalayo ang bawat pamilya. Ngayong may bakuna na, dahan-dahan nang bumabalik ang mga nakasanayang tradisyon dahil abot kaya na natin ng proteksyon. Kaligtasan ng pamilya ay ating obligasyon. Tara na't isabit ang mga makukulay na parol. Itayo ang Christmas tree. Sama-sama tayong magsimbang gabi. Kahit simple lang ang selebrasyon, basta't may proteksyon. Proteksyon ng pamilya ay sapat na ang aginaldo. Kumilos na't magpabakuna para sa ligtas na salo-salo. Dahil protektado ang Pasko ng pamilyang bakunado.
Halfway through the year, the Philippine military mourned the death of some of its troops in the crash of a C-130 plane of the Philippine Air Force in Sulu. Following the mishap, calls for the further modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines mounted to avoid a repeat of the tragedy. Janice Cave with the details.
July 4, 2021, Sunday. A Philippine Air Force C-130H Hercules transport aircraft from Villamor Air Base in Pasay City picked up personnel at Lumbia Airport in Cagayan de Oro and was on its way to Sulu. But as the plane landed at Honol Airport around 11:30 a.m., it missed the runway and ended up crashing in Barangay Bangkal, Patikul. The Armed Forces of the Philippines and Joint Task Force Sulu conducted a search and rescue operation to find survivors and retrieve the dead. 50 military personnel on board and 3 civilians at the crash site reportedly died, while 46 persons were injured. 40 other passengers were rescued. The day after the crash, President Rodrigo Duterte visited the AFP Western Mindanao Command in Zamboanga City to honor the deceased and wounded. He said the national government would provide protection and assistance to the fallen soldiers' families. In turn, the AFP also declared a 6-day mourning period. The Department of National Defense and the military held an investigation of the crash while advising the public not to make speculations. Investigators soon recovered the C-130's flight data recorder or black box and voice cockpit recorder. Meanwhile, those who died in the crash were burned beyond recognition and their identities had to be determined through forensic methods such as DNA testing. In September, the military determined that the crash of the ill-fated C-130 aircraft was due to a number of factors. Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana pointed to human and material factors aggravated by environmental conditions as the cause of the tragedy. The C-130H, with tail number 5125, was one of the two Hercules cargo transport planes acquired from the U.S. government that arrived in the country last January 29. As a result of the crash, lawmakers called for a hearing to ensure the safety of military aircraft. Meanwhile, Lorenzana revealed that the AFP will procure additional aircraft to boost the Air Force fleet. This is in line with the second phase of the modernization, which continues until 2022. Among the planned acquisitions include 2 brand new C-130s, 3 C-295 command and control fixed-wing aircraft, and 4 NC-212 light-lift fixed-wing aircraft. The C-130 crash in Sulu was considered the deadliest aviation accident in the history of the armed forces of the Philippines. To this day, soldiers in Sulu remember the tragedy and continue to honor the memory of their comrades as they fulfill their duties to the people. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
Victory is an understatement for the country's athletes, which raised our flag in the international scene. And it's not 1, not 2, but 4 Olympic medals, one of them being the elusive gold that spelled glittering hope for Filipinos even as the most prestigious sporting event in the world is held under the shadow of a pandemic. Chris Mundo brings us the highlights of our sports champions' journey.
For decades, the Philippines has been pursuing greatness in sports, especially in the Olympics. But it was in 2021 when the country reached its highest point in the international sports arena, and right when Filipinos were yearning for a morale boost amid the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. At the Tokyo Olympics in Japan, Heidelin Diaz won the first ever Olympic gold medal for the Philippines in the women's 55-kilogram category for weightlifting. Diaz previously won silver in the women's 53-kilogram weightlifting category in the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. Diaz follows the footsteps of swimmer Teofilo Ildefonso, the first to win multiple medals in the Olympics, first in 1928 and then in 1932. In boxing, featherweight boxer Nestle Petesio became the first Filipino boxer to clinch a medal at the Olympics. She earned a silver after bowing to Sena Irie of Japan in the finals. Flyweight boxer Carlo Paalam also won a silver after he lost to Galal Yafai of Great Britain in his final match. Meanwhile, middleweight boxer Yomir Marshall bagged a bronze when he failed to beat Ukraine's Alexander Kizniak in the semifinals. To date, the country now has 1 gold, 5 silvers, and 8 bronzes for a total of 14 Olympic medals. Filipinos cheered on as the Philippine delegation brought home the country's biggest medal haul from a single Olympics. Malacanang said it is no coincidence that the Philippines achieved its best Olympics campaign during the Duterte administration, given the millions of pesos it invested in the Filipino sports program. President Rodrigo Duterte expressed confidence that Filipino athletes will get better and stronger in securing more victories in the future. This momentous victory in the Tokyo Olympics would also lead to the passage in the House of Representatives of the Heidelin Diaz Law, a measure exempting the rewards and bonuses for athletes and coaches who join international sports competitions from all taxes, fees, and charges. Filipino sports also hit its lowest point this year with the exit of the boxing legend, the people's champ Manny Pacquiao. The fighting senator lost against Cuba's Sir Dennis Ugas on Sunday, August 22, Philippine time, at Las Vegas, Nevada, via unanimous decision. Pacquiao failed to reclaim the World Boxing Association welterweight title that was stripped away from him. Critics said the old Pacquiao is long gone, dragged down by age, physical wear and tear, and distractions from politics. On September 28, the inevitable happened. In a Facebook post, Pacquiao announced his retirement from boxing. As the boxer turned senator retired, Malacanang thanked Pacquiao for bringing pride and honor to the country. The palace continued to call him the People's Champ, acknowledging the unwavering support of Filipinos to his boxing career. With his retirement, Pacquiao would later on venture into a higher stage in his political career as a presidential aspirant in 2022. Pacquiao left behind his legacy of 26 years of boxing, winning 12 world titles in 8 divisions and in 4 different decades. His final record is 62 wins, 39 of which by way of knockout, 8 losses and 2 draws. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Mundo.
It has been another tough yet triumphant year for the country. Another year under the blanket of a pandemic, another 12 months of a roller coaster ride for the political scene, another 365 days of pride and success in sports and other prestigious events in the global stage. While tomorrow remains a mystery, it does not hurt to hope and work in order to reach that elusive dream and finally see the light at the end of the dark tunnel. And as we usher in another year ahead, let us celebrate and draw inspiration from yesterday's victories. Learn from defeats and make the most out of every opportunity while contributing to the progress of the country. I am William Theo from all of us here at the Philippine News Agency, wishing everyone a safe, prosperous, and blissful New Year!